The night my son called me a burden was the night I stopped believing in family. My name is Richard Moore, and I can still hear his words like shattered glass in my chest. I don't need another mouth to feed. Emil lied hours earlier. I had walked into my home expecting warmth after a long trip. Instead, I found devastation. The front door hung open. The frame splintered. The living room looked like a storm had torn through it. Books ripped from shelves. Photographs smashed. Drawers emptied, but it wasn't just random destruction. The thieves knew exactly where to look. Gone was the jewelry box that had belonged to my wife, Caroline. Gone was the pocket watch passed down from my grandfather. Even the emergency cash I'd hidden under the floorboard had vanished. Every piece of my past, every memory I thought safe, stripped away. My hands shook as I tried to steady myself. The house smelled wrong, like sweat and cigarettes. A stranger's scent layered over my life. I couldn't stay there, not with every corner screaming violation. I needed comfort. I needed blood. I called Daniel, my only son, my last living family. My voice cracked as I begged. They took everything. I can't sleep here tonight. Please, let me stay with you, just for a few days, and never too less. For a moment, there was silence, then laughter in the background, voices I didn't recognize. When he spoke, his tone was sharp, almost resentful. Dad, I don't have room for you. I don't need another mouth to feed. Say did Lee Sweth. The phone slipped in my hand. I thought I misheard. Daniel. I raised you. I just need a couch. Sadis. But he was firm, almost angry. I said no. Find a motel. You're not my responsibility. And then the line went dead. I stood in the wreckage of my home. The weight of betrayal heavier than the theft itself. The thieves had taken my possessions. But my own son had taken something far worse. He had taken away the last reason I had to believe I wasn't alone in this world. When I woke the next morning, the house felt like a carcass. The police tape stretched across my front porch glowed yellow in the early sun, and the silence inside was so heavy I could hear my own pulse. I sat at the edge of the stripped living room, staring at the patch of carpet where Caroline's rocking chair used to sit. The weight of emptiness was unbearable. I tried to remember how the house once sounded. Caroline humming in the kitchen, Daniel running down the stairs 2 steps at a time. Even the rattle of the old radiator in winter had felt alive. Now, everything was gone. The rooms were hollow. My memories louder than the present. I made coffee in a pot that had survived the chaos. But the smell only reminded me of her. She used to add a dash of cinnamon. I left the mug untouched and wandered through the wreckage. Every drawer yanked out. Every cabinet open. Every corner stripped of meaning. I picked up a broken photograph. Daniel, at 8 years old, wearing his first baseball uniform. He was grinning at me, missing teeth. Glove raised like he'd caught the winning ball. My throat tightened. That boy had once believed I was a hero. He used to beg me to stay at every game, and I never missed one. I thought love was enough. The neighbors came by mid-morning. Mrs. Callahan, with her soft voice and tired eyes, brought over a thermos of soup. I'm so sorry. Richard, no one deserves this. She patted my arm and looked around at the chaos. Did the police say anything? They think it was planned. I muttered. Whoever did this knew where everything was. In a tenger any was any wonder. She frowned. That's even worse. It means it was someone who's been inside before. She didn't say more, but the words hung heavy between us. Later, Mr. Owens from across the street stopped by. He's lived there almost as long as me. He folded his arms, glanced at the doorframe, and shook his head. Place like this isn't safe anymore. Richard, you should stay with family. And many one said. I swallowed hard. Family isn't an option. And many one said. He didn't press. But his silence said he'd heard something in my voice. Something I didn't want to explain. That evening I sat with the case file the officers had left. They wanted me to list every missing item in detail. It felt impossible. The piano wasn't just wood and strings. The jewelry wasn't just metal. They were chapters of a life now erased. I wrote the list anyway, each word tearing me open. Television, stereo, Caroline's wedding ring, my father's watch, emergency cash, tools from the garage, even Daniel's childhood guitar, the one I had saved 3 months to buy him when money was tight. I stopped at his name. For years, I had told myself that one day he'd come home, and we'd play together again. Now the guitar was gone, and so was he. The night pressed in early. I sat at the kitchen table with the soup Mrs. Callahan brought, untouched, and wondered how my life had folded into this. Betrayed by thieves, rejected by my own son, alone in a house that no longer felt like mine. And yet, a thought gnawed at me. Whoever had taken those things didn't just know my house. They knew me, my routines, my habits, even my hiding places. That realization sank deeper than the silence. The theft was more than random crime. It was personal. I did not sleep. At dawn, I walked room to room with a notebook, listing what was missing. The list grew while my handwriting shrank. In the garage, a cold thought landed. The hand truck by the water heater was gone. So were the nylon straps I used to move the freezer. I had marked one strap with blue tape last summer. A curl of that tape lay on the floor by the door. I went to the backyard and checked the birdhouse on the maple. It had a small compartment under the roof for a spare key. The latch hung open. The slot was empty. Only 3 people knew about that key. Caroline, me, and my son. I called Daniel again. No answer. He picked up on the 3rd try. His voice was thick. I am coming over. I said, I need to talk to you face to face. You do not need to do that. He replied, I have work. I will be quick. I drove across town with the radio off. Daniel lived in a brick building near the river. I rang and waited. A chain slid. He opened the door. Surprised. Then tired. Dad, you should have called. I did call. He rubbed his eyes. Right. Sorry. Come in. His place smelled like coffee. An empty pizza box sat on the counter. On the table lay a stack of mail with red stamps. Past due. He tried to cover it with his hand as we sat. I will not stay long. I said, last night was hard. I needed you. I am not here to fight. He nodded without meeting my eyes. About last night, I had people over. I said something I should not have said. I looked at his hands. The knuckles were scraped. Black lines marked his palms. The kind that come from nylon straps or dirty rope. You hurt your hands. I said, work. He replied, late delivery. No big deal. A soft voice came from the hallway. A woman in a sweater stepped into view. She was young, with circles under her eyes and a careful smile. I am Nora, she said. Do you want coffee? No. Thank you. I said. I stood. I only came to say this. I cannot be in that house alone until I fix the locks. If you change your mind, call me. He walked me to the door. When he hugged me, I caught a clean scent. Lemon oil, the kind I used on Caroline's piano. Back home, I checked the floor near the empty wall. A faint trail of black led to the back steps. It looked like rubber dust. I remembered the missing hand truck. I sat on the stairs until the cold went through my coat. Near noon, Mrs. Callahan knocked. She held a notebook. I wrote down what I saw. She said, "A white van on your street around 8. It had a moving logo, but no phone number. It circled twice and paused by your driveway. Did you see anyone get out?" 2 figures. One tall and thin. One shorter. Broader. I did not see faces. "I am sorry. You did more than anyone," I said. After she left, I walked the block. By the curb, I found a streak on the pavement, as if a heavy wheel had dragged through slush and stopped. Near the mailbox lay a broken red guitar pick. I turned it in my fingers. Daniel liked red picks when he was a kid. He pressed his thumb too hard and snapped them. I told myself lots of people use red picks. Then I saw a small crescent dent on the edge, the same shape his thumbnail made when he was nervous. In the afternoon, I went to the hardware store to order new locks. The clerk asked the brand. I told him. He looked up a kit and wrote a delivery date. Then he said, almost to himself, that they sold the same kit last week to a young guy. Same street number as mine. Different building. Could be a coincidence. I walked home slowly. Snow began again. I pushed the red pick in my pocket and felt its teeth against my thumb. The house waited for me like a patient animal. The first sign had not been the empty wall. It had been weeks earlier. Missed calls. A trip he canceled at the last minute. The way he changed the subject when I asked about work. The way he looked away when I spoke Caroline's name. How long had I refused to see the shape of this? At dusk I called him one more time. "Can you tell me where you were last night?" I asked. "Out," he said. "Why?" "Because someone used the spare key in the birdhouse. Because a van circled my block. Because the hand truck is gone. Because lemon oil is on your shirt." There was a long pause. His voice came back low. "You are tired, Dad. You are seeing patterns. Get some rest." He ended the call. I stood in the kitchen with the phone in my hand and knew rest would not come. The house felt smaller. The shadows felt longer. Somewhere in this city, someone had loaded my life onto wheels. I had one broken piece of plastic in my pocket and a growing ache in my chest that would not leave. Morning hit like glare. I tried to tidy the kitchen. It did not help. Every cupboard gaped. Lemon oil clung to my sleeve. It was not mine. I phoned Officer Lang. They would dust the safe and the back door. "Do not expect miracles," he said. When the fridge stopped, the house went dead quiet. Mr. Owens rang at 9. He had checked his driveway camera. We watched the clip. Snow blurred the picture. A white van rolled by at 8:14, circled, and parked across from my place. 2 figures stepped out. One tall, one shorter. Caps. Gloves. A bar in one hand. They moved like people who knew the route. He froze a frame where the van turned. The plate flashed and vanished. "No numbers," he said. If he had known, he would have sat on his steps all night. I told him no one could have known. On my walk back, I lifted my bin lid. A moving blanket lay inside. Gray fabric. Blue trim. The blue edge had a frayed corner from a nail years ago. It smelled like lemon oil and cold metal. I folded it and carried it in as if it were a person. I called Daniel. Voicemail. I texted. Nothing. At noon I went to his job. He did deliveries for a furniture store. The manager said he was out. Behind the building, 2 hand trucks leaned against the wall. One had a strip of blue tape on the handle. I tapped it. Fresh. It smeared my finger. A van pulled in with the company logo. Daniel jumped down. He looked tired. When he saw me, he set his face. "Dad, you cannot be here." "I can. And I am." I held up the blue smear. "Do you have a minute?" We went to the break room. He watched my hand. Then the floor. "We use tape to mark straps," he said. Do you still have your storage unit near the river? He blinked twice. Why? Because my house is empty. Because you told me to find a motel. Because you smell like lemon oil. He gave a laugh with no heat. You are seeing patterns, he said. You get like this when you are scared. I asked him to come help change my locks and have soup. He rubbed his face. I have a double shift, he said. The manager walked me out. He said Daniel had been solid until the last 2 months. Late? Distracted, he bit his lip. Sorry to say it. Back home, I opened my laptop and typed piano into the local marketplace. The first listings were clean. Then I saw it. An upright in a storage unit. Gray walls. Steel door. A dark varnish and a small crescent scar on the left cheek where I once scraped it. The bench had a hairline crack under the seat. I zoomed on middle C. A tiny chip. My stomach turned. The seller's name was M. Price. Location. River storage. Lot B. The note said, cash only. Bring help. I wrote from a new account. Is it still available? Can I see it tonight? Yes. Came back 5 minutes later, after 6. The profile had no photo. Created last week. River storage sat 5 minutes from Daniel's building. I knew because I had helped him rent a unit there when he moved. I found my old address book. The unit number I wrote years ago matched the faint number behind the piano in the photo. 2B. It sat there, like a ghost. I messaged again. Could you send a close photo of the left side? The reply came fast. The crescent scar filled the screen. A dull shine along the nick where I had once tried to polish it out. On the bench lid, a faint ring stain. Daniel left a juice cup there when he was 7. It never faded. The room tilted. What is the serial number? I typed. The answer came back. Do not know. Come look. Cash only. I stared at the photo longer. In the corner, I could see a black dolly track on the unit floor. The arc matched the black dust that led from my empty wall to the back steps. The world shrank to a point. I picked up my phone to call Daniel. I wrote and erased 3 messages. Please talk to me. Please tell me it is not you. Please let me help. I sent none. I called Officer Lang instead. I told him about the listing. He said not to go alone. Save screenshots. Keep the message times. Had the spare key ever left my property? Only family knew. I said. My voice broke on that word. I walked to the piano's old corner and touched the bare wall. The paint felt cold. Sunlight had left a pale rectangle around the spot where it once stood. I closed my eyes and heard my wife counting time for a child who could not sit still. Left hand, right hand. Again. She had patience I never had. She would tell me to breathe. She would tell me to wait. I tried. At dusk, Nora called. Her voice was careful. Daniel has had a hard week, she said. Please do not push him. I asked what he owed and to whom. She went quiet. Space will help, she said. I told her I had always given him space. Maybe too much. After dark, I found the old bottle of lemon oil. I opened the cap. The scent hit like a hand. I wiped the moving blanket. The smell rose stronger. Proof lived in the nose and the fabric. Yet I still told myself to wait. By midnight, the snow eased. The room felt emptied twice over. There was the theft. And there was the other loss. The kind that starts when your trust thins. I held the phone until the screen dimmed. I told the dark that I would go to river storage tomorrow. I told it I would look. I would be sure. Then I would decide what a father is supposed to do when the ground under him gives way. The next morning I woke with one thought pressing through my chest. No matter how much it shattered me, I could not live inside shadows and guesses. The marketplace message thread was still open on my laptop. The piano listing glared back. The crescent scar bright under harsh fluorescent light. Whoever had posted it had written again overnight. Still available. First come, first served. And others stayed. I called Officer Lang. Told him I was going to river storage that day. He warned me not to confront anyone. To wait for official action. But waiting felt impossible. Every second the piano sat in that unit was another second. My wife's memory was in the hands of thieves. I drove across town, with the blanket I had found in my trash bin folded in the passenger seat. The smell of lemon oil lingered. River storage stood on the edge of the industrial park. Rows of corrugated steel doors lined up like silent witnesses. The sky was gray, clouds threatening snow. I parked near the office, signed the guest sheet, and walked down the cracked pavement to Lot B. The unit in the photo 2B sat halfway down the row. A heavy padlock hung on the latch. Fresh tire tracks led to it, imprinted over thin slush. I stood still, my breath fogging the cold air. Every sound seemed louder. The distant hum of the highway, the bark of a dog, the clatter of a dumpster lid slamming shut. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos again. My pulse quickened. The faint outline of the storage unit wall in the picture was identical to this one. The chipped paint, the oil stain on the floor, the narrow strip of rust at the bottom corner. There was no mistake. I heard footsteps. My body froze. A white van turned the corner and rolled slowly toward me. The logo on the side had been partially peeled, as if someone had scraped it off with a blade. The van stopped near the unit. The driver's door opened. Daniel stepped out. He wore his work jacket, cap pulled low. For a moment he didn't see me. He unlocked the padlock, pushed the door halfway up, and bent to adjust the dolly inside. The piano's dark varnish gleamed under the strip of light. My wife's piano, my wife's memory. My throat tightened so much I could barely speak. Daniel. He jerked upright, head snapping toward me. His face went white. Dad, what are you doing here? I pointed to the piano. You tell me. What is this? He stammered. It's not what you think. Not what I think? That's your mother's piano. You used to play her lullabies on it when you were 8. Do you expect me not to recognize the scar on the wood? The stain on the bench? He glanced around the lot as if searching for escape routes. His hands shook as he lowered the door, blocking the view. Dad, please. You don't understand. It is laughter. I understand plenty, I said, my voice breaking. Someone tore apart my home. Someone used the spare key from the birdhouse. Someone knew I'd be gone, and here you are, standing in front of everything that was stolen. No Tendi, his jaw clenched. I didn't want you to find out like this. No Tendi. I felt my knees weaken, anger and grief colliding. Then tell me why. Why would you do this to me? To her memory, he whispered. Because I didn't have a choice. No Tendi. The words hung in the cold air, fragile and sharp. I wanted to press him, demand answers. But he grabbed the lock, snapped it shut, and backed toward the van. I can't talk now. Not here. Is there? The engine roared. The van pulled away, leaving me in a swirl of exhaust and silence. The unit door rattled once before settling, sealed again. I stood alone, staring at the row of steel doors, the echo of his words repeating in my skull. I didn't have a choice. My son had taken my life apart piece by piece, and now he was telling me there was more behind it, something I hadn't yet seen. I clutched the moving blanket to my chest, my fingers digging into the frayed blue edge. The lemon oil clung to me, impossible to wash away. The investigation was no longer a matter of missing possessions. It was a matter of blood, of truth, of deciding how much betrayal a father could bear before something inside him broke forever. I sat in my car outside the storage lot until my hands stopped shaking. I called Officer Lang and told him what I saw. He told me to stand down, to keep the screenshots and the message times, to let them work. I said I would try. Then I drove to Daniel's apartment because trying was not the same as doing nothing. Snow spit across the windshield. The river wind cut through my coat when I climbed the stairs. Nora opened the door. Her eyes were rimmed red. She stepped aside without a word and led me to the kitchen. The apartment smelled like burned toast and cold coffee. A space heater clicked near the sink. Daniel came from the hallway, pulling on a hoodie. He looked younger than he had in months. Then his mouth tightened and the years came back. He avoided the moving blanket in my hands like it was a live wire. We sat at the table. Nora folded a dish towel and unfolded it again. Daniel kept glancing at the clock on the oven. I placed the blanket down and set my phone beside it. The photo of the piano filled the screen. The crescent scar showed clear as a cut. "Tell me I am wrong," I said. He stared at the photo and then at me. "You should not have gone there alone," he said. "That is not an answer." Nora reached for his wrist. "Daniel, please." He pulled back. He tried to sound calm. "I did not break into your house." "Dad, then how is your mother's piano in your storage unit?" "It is not mine. A friend used the unit for a bit. I was holding it for him." "What friend?" "You do not know him." "What is his name?" He hesitated. "Mason." "Mason? What?" He raised his chin. "I do not have to give you his last name. You do if my wife's piano is behind your lock. You do if my door frame is split. You do if my spare key is gone." He shook his head. "You are building a story from pieces. This is not what you think." I slid the red guitar pick from my pocket and set it by the phone. He stared at it. His thumbnail nick matched the dent. "Lots of people use red picks," he said. "Lots of people do not press so hard they leave that crescent. You did it at 11. You still do it." Nora breathed out. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Daniel, tell your father the truth." His jaw worked. He looked at the door as if he wanted to walk through it and vanish. He reached out and spun the pick once. He did not meet my eyes. "I needed money," he said. "I was going to sell a few things from the attic. Old stuff. Things nobody used. I borrowed the piano to hold as collateral. I was going to bring it back. I swear." "Collateral with who?" He rubbed his temples. "You do not want to know." "I want to know everything," he snapped. "Fine." I fell behind. Work cut hours. Rent went up. Nora got sick. We had bills. I started playing again at Rivers. I thought I could win back what we owed. That is when the calls started. You cannot be late with those people. They come to your door. They learn your schedule. They say your name like it belongs to them. Nora closed her eyes. "I am not sick," she said. "I was pregnant. Then I was not." Her voice broke on the last word. "The clinic was not free. We have been carrying that alone. We did not know how to tell you." Silence filled the room like water. I looked at her and felt the floor tilt. I reached across the table. She flinched and then let me hold her hand. It was cold. I wanted to pull them both into my arms and promise to fix everything. I wanted to turn back time. I wanted to not see the lemon oil on Daniel's sleeve. I swallowed. "Why my house?" I asked. "Why not ask me for help?" He laughed without humor. "Ask you? You would have given a lecture about choices and pride. You would have talked about mom and work and responsibility. I could not bear it. I would have also opened my wallet." "Too late now," he said, and his mouth twisted. I had to make moves fast. A friend said there was a buyer for the piano. It would cover what I owed. I was not going to keep the money. I was going to buy back the ring and the watch. All of it. Then I would put everything back before you came home. "You used the spare key," I said. He stared at the table. "I knew where it was." You moved through rooms you grew up in and took the things your mother loved. He slammed his palm on the table. I did not smash anything. I did not tear the photos. That was Mason. He got impatient. He brought someone. He pushed me to hurry. He said if I did not close the deal, he would collect his money a different way. You think I wanted this? Nora cried then. Quiet. Tight sobs that shook her shoulders. She said she begged him to stop. He told her it was almost over. She said the calls kept coming at night. I felt something in me pull in too. One side was the father who held a fevered boy on the bathroom floor all night. The other was the man who had stood in a ruined living room and called that same boy for help and been told to find a motel. Both sides hurt. Both sides spoke. You could have come to me, I said again. He looked up. Eyes red. I am coming to you now. No, now you are cornered. There is a difference. The heater clicked. A siren wailed far away and faded. I placed my phone on the table and turned it so they could both see the messages with the seller. First come. First served. Cash only. Lot B. 2B. The photos. The timestamps. The close-up of the scar. The ring stain on the bench. Daniel closed his eyes. I will fix it, he said. I will call him and stop the sale. Just give me a day. I can make this right. A day is what you already took, I said. You did not only take wood and metal. You took safety. You took trust. I cannot sleep in that house. I cannot walk past that empty wall and breathe. How do you plan to fix that? He reached for my hand. For a second I almost let him. Then I saw Caroline's ring in my mind. The one she wore while she beat eggs for Sunday pancakes. The one that was not on her finger when I held her hand in the hospital. The one that was now a line on a list in a case file. I pulled my hand back and stared at the blanket. Do you want me to turn myself in? He asked. You want me in cuffs. You want to see me in a box for 2 years. Say it and I will go to the station. I will tell them I did it. Does that make you feel like a good man? Nora flinched. Daniel. He would rather see me in jail than admit he failed us. Daniel said, and his voice cracked. He failed Mom at the end. He failed me after. He failed to see I was drowning. The words hit like blows. Some were unfair. Some were not. I had not been enough when Caroline was dying. I had not been enough after. I had tried to keep the house alive with polish and lists. I had tried to keep Daniel close with small calls and soup. Maybe I had held on to things when I should have held on to him. I stood. The chair legs scraped the tile. I picked up the blanket. The lemon oil rose and filled my head. When I spoke, my voice sounded older. Call this Mason. I said, stop the sale. Meet me at my house at 7. We will go through the list and write down every place you took something. We will call Officer Lang together. I do not promise what I will say. I do not promise what I will not say. But I will not make that call without you standing next to me. He stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. You would do that. You made a mess in my home. You will help clean it. That starts with telling the truth and standing in it. Nora nodded fast. Tears still running. Thank you, she whispered. Do not thank me yet, I said. I stepped into the hallway. Daniel followed. He touched my shoulder. His hand was trembling. I almost turned and pulled him close. Then I remembered the open birdhouse latch, and the dead phone line, and the sound of his voice telling me to find a motel. I kept walking. Outside, the air was sharp and tasted like metal. I stood on the landing and watched cars move along the river road. The city kept breathing. People kept living. I held the blanket and felt its weight. I felt the weight of being a father. It was heavier than any dolly. It pressed down until my knees wanted to give. I went home to wait for 7. I made soup because I did not know what else to do with my hands. I laid the screenshots on the table. I set the red pic beside them like a small red truth. The clock ticked. The house listened. The empty wall stared back. I told it that I was still a father. I told it I would try to be a better one. Then I told it that trying might not be enough. 7 came slowly, as if the hour itself was afraid to enter. 7 o'clock came and went. I sat at the kitchen table with the evidence spread out like cards in a cruel game. The soup on the stove had gone cold. My eyes kept drifting to the empty wall where the piano had stood. The pale square of paint like an accusation. At 7:15, there was a knock. My heart leapt, then sank when I opened the door. It wasn't Daniel. It was Officer Lang. His expression was calm but searching. "We got an anonymous tip," he said. "A listing for an upright piano that matches your description. Storage unit on the river. Hellstand." I stepped aside and gestured to the table. "I already know," I whispered. "It's his." Hellstand. Lang's eyes flicked across the photos. The guitar pick. The blanket. He didn't ask how I'd gathered them. He didn't need to. "Mr. Moore," he said gently. "Do you understand what this means?" I nodded, though the motion felt like breaking my own neck. "It means my son robbed me. And," the words clanged in the room, "final. Irrevocable." The door knocked again. This time it was Daniel. He froze when he saw Lang, then forced a smile that collapsed at the edges. "Dad, I can explain." And Lang straightened. "Daniel Moore, I need to ask you a few questions." And Daniel's hands shot up as if surrender could erase the truth. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." And I stepped between them, my heart a storm. "Tell me everything. Now. No half-truths. No Mason. No stories. Just you and me." "How?" He sank into the chair across from me. His face looked years older, eyes hollowed by nights of fear. "It started with debt," he said. "Gambling. Then threats. I thought if I could just buy time, just sell a few things, I could fix it before you noticed. But I went too far. And too far." My voice cracked. "You stripped this house bare. You sold your mother's ring. You pawned your grandfather's watch. You violated every corner of the life we built." I zested in. His lip trembled. "I was desperate. They said they'd hurt Nora. I thought stealing from you was better than losing her." I zested in. Lang scribbled notes quietly, giving us space but recording every word. I leaned forward, my palms flat on the table. "And when I called you that night, when I begged for a place to sleep," he dropped his gaze. "I panicked. I thought if you came over, you'd see the truth. I thought rejection would buy me time. I didn't realize those words would cut deeper than the theft itself." The silence that followed was unbearable. My son sat broken before me. But the proof was undeniable. The receipts, the photos, the scent of lemon oil still clinging to his clothes. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said. The words left me raw, exposed. "But I know I can't lie for you either." Lang closed his notebook. His tone was professional but not unkind. "Mr. Moore, you'll need to decide if you want to press formal charges. The evidence is strong. Without your statement, we can only go so far." One number. I looked at my son. Tears streaked his face. He whispered, "Dad, please. I know I don't deserve another chance. But I'm still your son." One number. I turned away, my chest heaving. Proof had torn through denial. The piano, the ring, the watch, the guitar pick, the blanket, all of it pointed to the truth I had fought against. My son was the thief. My son was the betrayal. And yet he was also the boy who once fell asleep on my chest. The boy who asked me to stay until the nightmares passed. The boy who believed I was his hero. The weight of both truths crushed me. I need time, I told Lang. My voice was little more than air. I need one night before I decide. Quote, Lang nodded. He left quietly, promising to return in the morning. Daniel reached for my hand. I pulled back. Go, I said. I can't look at you tonight. As he weighed as a loved, he stood slowly, shoulders slumped, and walked to the door. Before he left, he whispered, I'll come back tomorrow. Please, don't give up on me yet. As he weighed as a loved, when the door shut, I collapsed into the chair. The house was still empty, still scarred. But the real wreckage was inside me. The proof was undeniable, and so was the heartbreak. I did not sleep. I lay on the couch and watched the ceiling fan shadow circle the same track. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel in my doorway with his hands up, and I heard Caroline's piano in a room that no longer existed. The clock ticked like a patient animal waiting to see what kind of man I would be. At 1 a.m, I wrote 2 words on a page. Love. Justice. Under love, I listed small things I had almost lost. Daniel asleep on my chest. Caroline laughing until she had to hold the counter. Little green cleats by the door after muddy games. Under justice, I wrote what had been taken. Ring. Watch. Piano. Safety. And the words my son used when I begged for a couch. I do not need another mouth to feed. I set the pen down and waited for the scales to tip. They did not. The house breathed and gave me nothing. Near 3, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight, the way I used to circle Daniel's bed when he had fevers. Outside, the snow had crusted to a brittle shell. The porch light painted the police tape a sick yellow. I stood at the birdhouse and touched the empty slot where the key had lived. The wood was cold. It felt like a grave. Back inside, I made coffee I did not drink. I opened a box of old letters. One card held 3 sentences Caroline wrote weeks before she died. If we lose our way, tell the truth, even when it hurts. Hold the person, not the story you want them to be. Love is not the same thing as permission. The words steadied me like a hand on my back. I called Mr. Owens. He answered on the second ring and told me to come over. He opened his door in slippers and led me to the kitchen where a small light burned over the sink. He poured coffee and listened while I told him everything, from the open birdhouse to the storage unit. He did not offer simple comfort. He stared at the steam and said when his brother stole from their mother. It took 5 years to eat at the same table again. Then he added the advice he trusted. Holding a line is a kind of love when the person you love is walking toward a cliff. What would you do? I asked. He said he would call the officer in the morning and give the statement. And he would be at the station when his boy arrived. And he would look his boy in the eye, so the last thing that boy saw before the door closed was not a stranger. On the way home, I stopped at Mrs. Callahan's because her kitchen light was on. She had baked something that made the hall smell like a holiday. I told her I was thinking about pressing charges. She covered her mouth and then put a hand on my arm. This is not punishment, she said. This is a chance to stop him before the road gets worse. Do not wait for harm to knock twice. Dawn pushed a thin blue line across the windows. At 6, I called Nora. I told her what I was leaning toward. She cried and then steadied. She said she would stand with Daniel whether the path went through a courtroom or not. She asked me to remember that he had been soft once. I said I remembered the boy and I also saw the man and that I could no longer pretend they were the same. At 7, I shaved because I wanted to carry a steady face into an unsteady day. I made copies of every photo and message. I placed the red guitar pick in a small plastic bag so it would stop cutting my thumb. I stood by the empty wall and spoke aloud to the space where the piano had stood. I told it that I was not choosing against my son. I was choosing for the part of him that might still come back if someone drew a line and kept it. At 8, I met Mr. Farr Owens on his porch. He wore his heavy coat and carried his old camera case. We drove downtown without the radio. Officer Lang led us to a small room with 2 chairs and a table carved by impatient hands. I sat and set the folder down. I asked to wait for Daniel. Lang checked the clock and said there was time. He said I did not have to be the one to bring my son in. I told him I did not want to hide behind a report when there were still words I needed to say to my boy's face. At 8:30, I called and left a message. Meet me at the station at 9. We will tell the truth together. 9 arrived, and then 9:10. The door did not open. Lang asked if I wanted to begin. I spread the photos like small windows into the past week. The unit door. The crescent scar. The bench stain from a child's cup. The messages with the selling language. The red pick. The blanket. I signed the statement and spoke each sentence first as if words could build a bridge strong enough to carry the paper. When I finished, I felt emptied and heavier at once. Lang said they would request a warrant for the unit. Contact the marketplace. Reach out to Daniel formally. He made a copy of my file and handed it to me. On the sidewalk, winter air struck my face clean. Mr. Owens asked if I wanted breakfast. I said no. I wanted to go home and wait, because there was still one thing left to do. At noon, I typed a message to Daniel. I wrote 16 words. I love you. I gave my statement. Meet me at the house at 3 if you want to talk first. Then I turned off my phone so I would not stare at the screen like a horizon waiting for a ship. I set the kettle on the stove and told the quiet rooms what I had done. It was not comfort. It was a kind of honesty. 3 would come, whether he came or not. The line had been drawn. I had chosen the kind of love that does not move when the wind pushes. 3 o'clock came with a sky the color of pewter. I sat in the kitchen with the kettle still warm and the evidence folder closed on the table. Every tick of the wall clock was louder than the last. At 3:12, the front door opened. Daniel stepped inside. His shoulders hunched as if the winter air had followed him. He looked around the living room as though seeing the wreckage for the first time. His eyes lingered on the pale rectangle where the piano had been. He whispered, "I never thought it would look this empty." I didn't answer. I motioned to the chair. He sat. For a long moment, we listened to the house breathe. Then I pushed the folder toward him. I gave my statement this morning. They'll open the unit, and they'll know everything. This is your last chance to speak as my son, not as a suspect. His hands shook as he opened the folder. Photos spilled out: piano, pick, blanket. He pressed his palms over his face. "I'm sorry, Dad. I thought I could fix it before it reached this point. I would bet you." The knock on the door was firm. Practiced. 2 officers stood on the porch. Officer Lang and a younger partner I didn't know. Lang's eyes moved from me to Daniel. "Mr. Moore, we have a warrant for your storage unit and an order to bring you in for questioning." I would bet. Daniel's breath came fast. He looked at me like a cornered animal. "You really did it," he whispered. "You called them on your own son." "They." My throat burned. I didn't call them on my son. I called them on the man who stole from me. The man who lied to me. The man who let his mother's piano sit in a cold steel box for cash. They. Nora appeared behind him, pale and trembling. She must have followed him from the apartment. "Please," she begged, gripping his arm. "Tell them everything. Don't make this worse." "They." Daniel's voice cracked. "If they take me, my life is over." They sternly. I stepped closer, close enough to smell the lemon oil still clinging to his jacket. "No. Daniel, your life isn't over, but the life you've been living ends tonight." They sternly Lang read him his rights in a steady monotone. Each phrase landed like a hammer. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. The cuffs clicked around his wrists. Nora sobbed, clutching his sleeve until the younger officer gently pulled her back. Daniel's eyes locked on mine as they guided him out. I'm still your son, he shouted, voice breaking. No matter what you think, I'm still your son. Is they won? The words hit me harder than any winter wind. I stood in the doorway as the patrol car pulled away, its red and blue lights painting the snow. My body felt carved hollow. I had chosen justice. But justice felt like grief with paperwork. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. I heard a door close, a dog bark, the world continuing. Inside, the house sagged under the weight of silence. I sat at the table again, staring at the folder. I told myself I had done the right thing, that Caroline would have wanted truth, not denial. But the empty wall answered with nothing but shadows. When the phone rang an hour later, it was Lang. They had opened the unit, the piano, the jewelry, the watch all accounted for. You'll be contacted about restitution, he said. His voice was professional, but softer now. Mr. Moore, you should know your son admitted everything. He said he did it for money he owed, but also because he thought you'd never help. He said he hated himself the moment he shut you out that night. There's nodded Fielding. I closed my eyes. The ache in my chest deepened. Justice had arrived. Swift and cold. But no sentence could rebuild trust. No warrant could return what was broken between father and son. I hung up, turned off the lights, and sat alone in the dark kitchen. For the first time in years, I wished the house would burn down around me. At least then the emptiness would have a reason. The night after the arrest stretched until it felt like a second winter. I sat in the dark and let the house tell me what I already knew. The piano would come home. The ring might come back in a plastic bag. The watch would tick again. None of it would give me sleep. At dawn, the phone rang. It was the county office with times and numbers. Arraignment at 10. Victim advocate on the 3rd floor. I shaved again because I needed small order where there was none. Mr. Owens drove. I watched the river slide under a gray sky and felt older than the day. The courthouse smelled like paper and coffee. The walls were the color of wet stone. Nora stood outside the courtroom with her hands knotted in her sleeves. When she saw me, she tried to smile. It failed. We sat together without touching. They brought Daniel in with 3 others, wrist to wrist. He kept his eyes low until the bailiff called his name. Then he looked up and found me. There was no hate in his face. Only a stunned boy expression that did not match the stubble on his jaw. I had to look away to keep from breaking. The judge read the charges. Residential burglary, theft over a set amount, possession of stolen property. The words stacked like bricks. The clerk asked about counsel. A public defender stepped forward. Bail was set. Conditions were listed. No contact with the victim without permission. No gambling premises. Curfew. Report twice a week. He said yes to each condition. Voice small and tight. On the steps outside, Nora put her head in her hands. He will be released by evening. She said, we do not have money for bail. My aunt will help. We will pay it back. I told her not to promise what weight might forbid. She nodded, eyes raw. The victim advocate led me to a small room with a window that looked at a brick wall. She spoke gently and straight. I could write a statement. I could ask for restitution. I could give a sentence preference. Probation with treatment. Or time. She said every family is different. She said there is no right way to feel. I met the prosecutor after. Miss Connolly. Crisp voice. Calm hands. She had my file open and the photos lined like a map. She said the evidence was clean. The storage unit sealed the case. She asked what I wanted. The question sat between us like a stone. I said the piano matters. The ring matters. The watch matters. But what I want most is for my son to stop running from himself. I want him to stop lying. I want him to stop thinking debt is a door you can walk through if you just run fast enough. She nodded and wrote. Then she offered a path, a plea. 2 years probation, restitution, mandatory counseling for gambling, community service, random checks, if he completes all of it. No record that ruins every job for a decade. If he fails, the suspended time. She asked if I could stand behind that. I heard Caroline's voice from the card in the drawer. Tell the truth even when it hurts. Love is not the same thing as permission. I told Miss Connolly I would support a plea with treatment and restitution. I told her that if he broke it, I would stand behind time. Back home, I waited for a truck that the police arranged. 2 men carried the piano in with soft straps and quiet steps. They set it on the old rug and slid wedges under the legs. One of them touched the scar on the cheek and said he liked it. It told a story. I nodded and signed the form with a hand that did not feel like mine. After they left, I stood and looked at the bench. The ring stain was still there from a child's cup. My throat closed. I lifted the lid and sat. The keys were cool. I pressed one and then another. The notes sounded thin in the empty room. I tried to play the simple song Caroline taught us both. My hands could not remember the shape. The sound faltered. I put my head on the wood and cried until the edge of the bench left marks on my forehead. The detective returned the ring and watched the next day. Evidence bags, labels, signatures. The ring had a small nick on the band. The watch had a new scratch no one else would notice. I saw both. I thanked him. When the door closed, I placed the ring on the kitchen table and watched the light bend around it. I could not put it on my finger. It did not belong there. People in the neighborhood knocked and spoke in careful voices. Some praised the line I held. Some said they would have hidden it for their child and paid in secret. I nodded because arguing did nothing but stir the air. When the door shut, the house was still the house. That evening, Nora came alone. She took a breath and told me what the calls had sounded like. Quiet voices with no curse words. Precise threats about hours and addresses. She said they had walked in circles at night because bed felt like a trap. She held out her hand. In her palm lay a small folded paper. A copy of a bill. A number that would take months to pull down even with 2 jobs. She said she would sell her wedding set if she had to. She said restitution would be paid if she had to carry boxes until her feet gave. I told her to sit and drink tea. I told her I did not want a ring she loved on a pawn shelf. She cried at that. I cried too. We did not try to stop each other. She left me a sealed envelope from Daniel. I held it a long time before opening it. The first line asked for nothing. He wrote that the cell smelled like bleach and old socks, and that he deserved worse. He wrote that the look on my face at the door would be the shape of his nights for a long time. He wrote that he loved me, and that he had not said it enough since we lost Mom. He wrote that if the plea was offered, he would take it. He promised to make every payment until the debt was ash. I did not know whether to believe him. Love wanted to run to the door. Caution told it to sit down. I placed the letter with Caroline's card and closed the drawer as if I could keep both safe together. That week I went to a group at the church basement. Families of people who gamble. The coffee was thin. The chairs were metal and honest. A man with careful hair said 3 lines that I wrote on my palm. You did not cause it. You cannot control it. You cannot cure it. He said I could still love my son and not hold his lies. He said both can be true at once and that the weight of that truth will try to bend your spine. When I got home, the piano was a dark shape in a dim room. I sat again. I put the ring in a small dish beside the metronome. I wound the watch and set it on the lid. I pressed one key and waited for the sound to fade all the way, past the point where ears hear and into the part where memory hears. Then I pressed another. I wanted to feel Caroline walk the room, even if only in the small tremble of a string. Guilt did not leave. It walked beside me from hallway to sink to bed. It asked if I had been too hard too late. It asked if I had chosen the law because it was easier than talking to a wounded man in my kitchen. It asked if I turned my boy into a headline inside my own head. I could not answer any of it. Night came early. The house held its breath. I lay on the couch and listened to the clock. I told the dark that I had done the best I could with broken tools. I told it that I did not know if that was enough. I told it that I missed my wife and my son in the same room, and that missing both at once was a kind of double weather that freezes a man where he stands. I closed my eyes and felt the couch tilt like a small boat. The low point had no floor. It was only water and cold and the hope that morning might be kinder. The weeks after the plea blurred into one long stretch of gray mornings and heavier nights. Daniel was released under conditions. And every day I waited for a call telling me he had broken one of them. The fear was sharper than anger. Fear that he would slip. Fear that he would drown deeper. Fear that my choice had only chained him rather than saved him. One afternoon in February, a letter arrived. The envelope had his handwriting, careful and deliberate like a schoolboy's. My chest tightened as I tore it open. Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. The counselor says the first step is admitting what I've done, not asking for a shortcut back. I stole from you. I betrayed you. I lied to your face. I've spent nights hearing the echo of your voice when you said you couldn't look at me. I hear it louder than the cell door closing. I hate what I've become, but I want to change. I'm trying. Please believe me. Still your son. Daniel. Steady over. The paper shook in my hands. For the first time since the night of the break-in, I let out a sound that was not anger, not grief, but something smaller like the crack of ice when water finally moves underneath. I carried the letter to the piano and set it beside Caroline's metronome. The room felt less empty, as if her memory and his words were speaking to each other in silence. The next week I attended his first counseling session. The group sat in folding chairs, each person carrying stories like scars. Daniel spoke last. His voice shook as he admitted he had pawned his mother's ring for less than the cost of a week's groceries. He said he looked at the receipt every night until it burned his eyes. He did not cry, but his hands trembled so hard the counselor placed a glass of water in front of him. Afterward, he approached me outside. "You shouldn't have come," he said. Not with anger, but shame. "I came because you're still my son," I replied. "And because I needed to hear you tell the truth with my own ears. They will dento in me." His eyes watered. It felt like swallowing glass. But I said it. "They will dento in me." I nodded. That's how healing starts. He's now waited at home. Mrs. Callahan knocked with another dish of soup. She told me she'd seen Daniel at the community center sweeping floors as part of his service. He kept his head down, she said. But he worked hard. I thanked her, though my throat was too thick to say much more. The neighborhood began to thaw with spring, but my heart thawed slower. Some nights I still replayed his words from that call. "I don't need another mouth to feed," and the wound opened fresh. Yet the letter on the piano was proof that he could choose different words now. In April, Nora visited. She looked tired but steadier. She thanked me for not turning my back completely. She said Daniel was going to meetings twice a week, that he came home quiet, that he had stopped lying about small things. "It's like he's learning how to breathe again," she whispered. That night, I sat at the piano and pressed the chipped key in the middle. The note rang clear, not broken. I placed my hand flat on the wood. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lift, if only slightly. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the start of something that might one day grow into it. A small light, faint but real, in a house that had been dark too long. 6 months can change the trouble in a man's face. It began with small things. Daniel showed up on time. He did not ask for money. He called when he said he would call. He brought receipts for every restitution payment without my asking. He stood with his shoulders straight in front of Miss Connolly and promised to finish counseling. He went home and scrubbed the community center floors until the custodian asked his name. Spring warmed the block. The police tape came down. I painted the front door a color Caroline would have liked. Nora planted herbs in a long wooden box and placed it on my windowsill. She asked before she did it. I said yes. The house needed the smell of living things. On Thursdays, I went to the church basement and sat on the same metal chair. The coffee stayed thin. The stories stayed heavy. A woman said her husband once sold their car for chips. A man said he let his son sleep in jail because love asked him to wait. We passed a small basket and a book for first names. I wrote Richard in the top corner. Every week the handwriting steadied. In May, the restitution ledger reached its first mile. I did not count days. I counted receipts. Each one meant he had chosen to walk back across a bridge he burned. Each one meant he had not gambled. The counselor gave him a small token with the number 6 on it. He turned it over in his palm like it was both weight and light. He did not show it off. He put it in his pocket and tapped it during hard moments. We adjusted to rules. He could visit on Sundays for dinner. He could not sleep here. He could not hold my keys. I could buy groceries when the month ran thin. I could not hand him cash. We agreed to speak in plain words. No soft lies. Even when truth scraped the throat. When summer arrived, I oiled the piano and set a new lamp by the bench. The ring stayed in a dish beside the metronome. The watch kept time. Sometimes I left it ticking in the kitchen while I walked through the rooms. So I would not forget that steadiness exists, even when grief insists it does not. People in the neighborhood began to treat us like a story that was ending instead of a storm that would not pass. Mr. Owens asked me to help paint his fence. Mrs. Callahan invited us for cobbler. She told Daniel he looked like his mother when he concentrated. He flushed and said he knew. One afternoon in July, Nora asked if she could talk alone. We sat in the shade of the maple where the birdhouse still hangs. She told me she had started a second job. She said she wanted to earn the right to feel proud again. She said Daniel had not stepped into a casino since the plea. She said the quiet at night was different now. It did not hum with fear. It breathed like a tired person who was finally sleeping. Then she told me something else. She was late. She had taken 2 tests. She was waiting for the clinic doctor to call. Her hands shook. She laughed once in a way that held tears. I felt the ground shift. I looked at the house I had almost abandoned. I thought of the empty wall and the weeks of cold. I thought of the small token in Daniel's pocket. I told her I would be here no matter what the doctor said. She nodded and cried into her sleeve. Relief looks like a person remembering they do not have to be alone. On the day Caroline would have turned 63, I set her photograph on the piano and made a simple meal. Daniel and Nora came with bread and a small cake. We held our own memorial without speeches. We spoke about little things. The way Caroline could fix a leaky sink with a rubber band and a jar lid. The way she could walk into a room and quiet a fight with one look. At the end, Daniel asked if he could try the lullaby she once taught him. His hands hovered over the keys. He missed 2 notes and found a third. He lifted his head and asked if I would play the left hand. I did not remember at first. Then my fingers found the shape. We did not sound good. We sounded like a family practicing. In August he had a slip. Not a casino. An online game that looked like skill and acted like chance. He stopped after 10 minutes and called his sponsor. He called me the next day and told me without flinching. The old fear rose in my chest. I kept my voice steady. Thank you for telling me. Do not hide. Keep going. He said he would. He went to a meeting and sat in the front row. He handed the token to the counselor and asked for the one with 0 on it. He did not lie to make it smaller. That mattered more than the slip itself. The prosecutor sent a letter. Restitution on track. Community service, hours above requirement. Counseling attendance, perfect. I placed the letter beside the metronome. Not triumph. Just proof of a direction. In September, we went to the cemetery. The grass had gone brown in the heat. We cleaned the stone and set fresh flowers. Daniel stood with his hands in his pockets and talked to his mother in a low voice I could not hear. When he finished, he wiped his cheeks with the back of his hand, the way he used to when he was small. On the drive home, he said he had written her a letter and burned it because he wanted the smoke to carry the words. I told him I thought she would have liked the joke about the leaky sink. He smiled without hiding his teeth. It was the first time I had seen that smile since winter. Autumn came with clear light. I taught 2 children from the block how to read chords. They were loud and impatient and pure. The house liked their noise. Their mother paid me with jars of soup and thanks. At night I sat in the chair by the piano and read my wife's old recipes. I cooked them in the quiet and invited Daniel to try the bad ones. He ate everything like it was a duty and a gift. We did not say the word forgiveness. We said words like today and next time and I am sorry. We stood inside small promises and tested them until they held. In November, the clinic called Nora with a voice that shook. The test was positive. She was 11 weeks along and strong. She cried and then laughed at the same time. I sat down on the kitchen floor. I pressed my hands to my eyes until stars appeared. Then I stood and held her. And we breathed like people finally let out of a long hallway. We did not call anyone for an hour. We just sat on the couch and listened to the watch tick on the piano lid. When Daniel came back from a meeting, he saw us and stopped. Nora handed him the printout. He sat on the step and bent forward until his forehead touched his knees. Then he stood and walked to the empty wall that was no longer empty. He put both hands on the wood and whispered, "Thank you," 3 times. That night I wrote a sentence on a new card for the drawer. It is possible to be wrong and keep going. It is possible to break a thing and build with the pieces. It is possible to laugh in a house where you once wished for fire. Winter would come again. It always does. But the rooms felt ready for it. There were coats by the door and soup on the stove and music practicing in the corner. When I lay down, I did not beg the ceiling for mercy. I told the dark what I was grateful for. The list was short and full at once. A son who told the truth. A woman who stayed. A heartbeat we could not yet see. I turned out the light and slept. Winter returned with sharp winds and early nights. But the house no longer felt hollow. The piano stood where it belonged. The metronome ticking like a small heartbeat. Nora's belly grew under her coat. A quiet promise that life still chooses to move forward, even when grief would rather freeze it. On Christmas Eve, Daniel came early. He carried no packages, only a folded piece of paper. He sat at the table, his hands tight around it. "Dad," he said, "this is my amends letter. The counselor says I need to read it to you, not just hand it over." It did. His voice cracked as he spoke. He admitted every lie, every theft, every moment he had chosen silence over truth. He wrote that he hated himself the night he told me to find a motel. He wrote that he knew Caroline would have wept if she had seen what he became. At the end, he wrote, "I want to be a man you can invite into your house without fear. I want my child to know a grandfather who believes in him. I am asking for a chance to live different. Not because I deserve it, but because you once taught me what family means." In question, Ed proved tweaking the deity. When he finished, the paper shook in his hands. I reached across the table and held his wrists steady. Daniel, I said, you are still my son. I will never stop being your father. Forgiveness is not a door that opens all at once. It's a path, and we're already walking it. Oh, tears slipped down his face. But his shoulders eased as if a weight had been lifted. Nora stood behind him, resting her hands on his shoulders, her eyes wet but hopeful. In February, the baby came, a boy with dark hair and lungs strong enough to shake the hospital walls. They named him Caleb. When the nurse placed him in my arms, the years of anger and doubt cracked open, and all that remained was love. Fierce and unstoppable, I whispered to him that mistakes are not the end, that even broken families can mend, that his father and I would both fight to give him a life free of the shadows we had lived under. Spring followed with soft rains and lighter mornings. I moved Caroline's photograph to a place above the piano where the light touched her smile at dawn. I wound the watch each night and listened to its steady rhythm beside Caleb's cries. I slipped her ring onto a chain and gave it to Nora, telling her it was hers to keep safe until Caleb was old enough to understand where he came from. On the anniversary of the break-in, Daniel and I sat on the porch together. We didn't talk about court dates or restitution ledgers. We talked about Caleb's first smile, about the sound of his tiny laugh, about the way he wrapped his fist around a finger as if he'd never let go. Daniel looked at me and said, "Dad, I finally understand. You didn't call the police because you hated me. You did it because you loved me enough to let me face what I'd done." "Opa's now," I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The street was quiet. The maples swayed in the wind. For the first time since Caroline's death, I felt peace settle in the house. Not perfect, not permanent, but real. That night I played the lullaby on the piano. Daniel sat beside me with Caleb in his arms. The baby's eyes fluttered closed to the uneven notes. I pressed the chipped key, let the sound fade, and whispered into the quiet, "We are still here. Help you." The watch ticked. The metronome swayed. Caroline's photograph caught the lamplight. And in that moment, grief and healing shared the same room. No longer enemies, but companions. The story did not end with betrayal. It ended with the hardest truth a father can learn. Sometimes love means letting your child fall. And sometimes love means standing there when they learn to rise again.